Hey, Joe.
Hey Mom, it's March and the thing on everyone's mind is St. Patrick's Day, and we decided to take the idea of the holiday and its connection to luck as our overarching topic.
Yeah, we had a great conversation defining luck and comparing it to spirituality, well-being, law of attraction, manifesting, all the things. The conversation for our listener is broken up into 4 episodes released throughout the month of March, and we'll label them parts 1, 2, 3, 4, just in case the listener wants to listen in order. But yeah, I was surprised how deep the conversation got, especially the idea around luck being a force. And this thought took us deeper into the idea of God and really had us processing our spiritual beliefs. You know, we questioned whether luck was an internal or external force. So is it something that we create from our own thoughts and feelings, or something that's outside having an impact on our lives that we have no control over? And how would that be like our idea of God?
Absolutely. It brings up a lot of questions. Is God good? Is he involved? Is God caused by luck? Is he internal, external? Is he both? Is God really in control of our world, or is he limited? So yeah, it was really surprising and fascinating. It was a great conversation, and I don't think we expected to get so deep into luck, but I know I've never spent so much time thinking about it, but I really enjoyed it. I hope for our listeners you really enjoy it. But yeah, reach back out to us. Let us know if anything sparked a new idea for you about spirituality, mystery, luck, or any of those things.
All right, it was a great conversation, so let's get into it. So being able to unpack, like, okay, well, what if we say luck is if we are kind of looking at the spiritual perspective of luck being something that kind of is external, like we've looked at how manifesting and all that is kind of from the inside out. But if we take a minute to kind of think about, okay, let's consider it being an outside in approach. What does that mean? Because I think a lot of people still consider even God, quote, God, to be an outside in kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like God is this outside figure who's kind of like, for me, let me speak for myself. Like when I was younger, I always thought God was like somewhere out there. He was like in the universe, kind of this like external out in the cosmos, like force, dad, like, because God the Father, right? Like it was always equated as a father. But unfortunately, I and most people view God the way they view their fathers. And when you didn't have a very involved father, or you had an abusive father, or, maybe your father died, or, you know what I mean? Like if there was not a very healthy relationship with your natural born father, you tend to carry that into your view or your perspective of a godfather figure, whatever. And I did the same thing. So God was just this uninvolved, kind of out there thing that was kind of just waiting for me to screw up.
Yeah.
And like put the hammer down, you know?
Yep.
Like criticize me for something, because that was my perceived experience with my earthly father.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has taken me a few decades to like, and only here in the last year and 6 months, I'm really starting to consider the idea of God looking like Jesus. Because, like we read in the Christian Bible, the Old Testament God looks mean, angry, hard to please, difficult, separate, sort of holy, right? Up on the mountain, holy, can't have anything to do with ugly, dirty sinners, right? And then here comes Jesus on the scene in the New Testament, and he's like loving, he's hanging out with kids, he's hanging out with prostitutes, all the things.
And the Pharisees are like, why are you hanging out with these terrible people?
Yeah, the super religious people of the day are like,
This makes no sense.
you're not of God, like, you don't know what you're talking about, and you're a blasphemer, all these things, right? So how do I reconcile? If Jesus said, look, no one has seen the Father, but if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So if God the Father of the Old Testament looks like Jesus, because that's what Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So the Father looks like me. I and the Father are one. We are one thing. So how do I reconcile then that angry, separate, super holy, unable to be with sin, and even people say, God turned away when Jesus was on the cross because he couldn't have anything to do with sin, and that's why Jesus said, why have you forsaken me? When really that's just quoting the psalm, that the religious people of the day would have been totally aware of, like
this psalm. Oh my gosh, we actually just went over this in Bible study on Tuesday, last Tuesday, and that psalm was so crazy.
Psalm 22.
Yeah. It was so crazy. Like, it had so much more to do with, like,
God actually being there and being present
rather than
than separate. So me? It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
But so if luck or God or whatever the force that is external is causing things in my life, I have to reconcile, if that's my perspective. Like, we're not talking about the internal manifestors anymore. We're talking about the other camp. Like, we have to kind of reconcile this idea of, is this outside force benevolent?
What does that mean?
Benevolent?
Yeah.
Like, is it, does it want good things for me?
Okay, that's what I thought I meant. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Is it benevolent? Does it want good for me? Does it care whether I get good or bad?
Or is it
causing the good or the bad? Yeah. Or is it just watching the good or the bad? Is the force kind of just something that like blew something into existence, and then that existent thing now takes on a life of its own and has its own cause and effect down the line? Wow. I'm reading this really interesting book called Creative Chaos by Andrew Rabe. And it's fascinating about, like, every culture has a very similar, actually, creation story. There are like elements within each story that are super similar, like down to perfect gardens and snakes and humans, needing to work the land and all these things. It's really interesting. But it suggests, I'm only in the beginning of the book, the first few chapters, but it is suggesting that creation, like, there was no intention to have a perfect place, like a perfect garden. We think of the Garden of Eden as this heavenly place, like this perfect place without sin, without trouble, without torment. All is well, all is happy, all the things, right? The book is suggesting that creation itself is a messy thing. And humans had to start from a messy place. And we are becoming beautiful, rather than we started off perfect and then we had this fall. And now we're just forever trying to make our way back to perfection. It's really suggesting that no, creation is actually this thing where there's this place known as the garden that is actually pre-creation, where it's the idea of a lion, it's the idea of perfect fruit, or it's the idea of actual things. They haven't manifested yet, though. And so it's interesting to see the parallel now with that idea connected with our topic here about luck and manifesting and like things coming from inside out.
Yeah.
choosing our vibrations, choosing our emotions, choosing our thoughts, choosing our perspectives. If we can do that, if we can live our life from that place, we then can become co-creators with one another, with the universe, with God, with the force, with luck, whatever, to create the world that we want to see. But every individual has the right to participate in that or not. And so maybe that's why we see dissonance. Maybe that's why we see discord. Maybe that's why we see, the negative, because not every person is on board with living that kind of life, or maybe they're stuck in some kind of negative thinking cycle. And so you've got some people who are on board and like, yeah, let's co-create and make this amazing, garden. Let's create and get closer and closer to perfection. And then you've got the other camp that's like, oh, life is shit, like nothing good ever happens to me. So like, there's just always this kind of weird, I'm just picturing like, energy waves just kind of going up and down. And there's just always this weird pattern of things happening.
It was really cool hearing you talk about like these two different camps, because I feel like I land so weirdly either in the middle or just in a different camp. But I was just considering this other perspective of not necessarily having this like perfect garden, but also I had a thought in the middle of that. I was like, what if God literally just made earth in heaven? And then like once that decision was made.
Well, what do you mean? What's heaven?
I don't know. See, now I'm spiraling. No, I'm not spiraling. But just like the thought of like God creating I've always envisioned God living in heaven far, far away. This is kind of what I grew up with too. And then being like, oh, I'll make a universe. I'll make a planet. Cool. Makes a planet, puts people on it. Creation. And to an extent, I think that creation piece is true. But I think rather than God being like light years away, it's kind of like either God creating it inside of his heaven. I don't think we're as far from heaven as I thought we always were. It's not like we die and are shipped off to heaven. It's like we die and like we're almost in like God's backyard, if that makes sense. Like I think we're closer, or we're in a piece of heaven, if that makes sense. Because if I'm talking about, I'm going really off topic, but like if I'm noticing that like God's in all the things, is heaven even a different place, or is it just a different perspective? Anyway, crazy idea.
No, that's actually, when you were talking, that's the thought that was in my head, was feeling like you're dancing around this idea that heaven's not actually a place. It's a state of being. Yeah.
And it just made me think of like, rather than us being created these perfect things and then falling, oh, terrible, didn't see that coming, whatever. And oops, that was bad luck.
Put that banana on the floor. Exactly. What bad luck I got there.
And then having to like work our whole lives away to be worthy or whatever.
Toil and slave.
Exactly. Like, or like even working, what was the other perspective? Working towards this like being this beautiful thing. I was just envisioning like, well, what if we just are the way we were intended to be? And like, I will become a better version of myself every day the more I sit in this identity, this perfect core that God's put in my heart. And I think it was kind of funny because when I first met you, I think it scared me because I think you said something like, oh, I don't believe that we're like innately bad. And I was like, that's what I've always believed. And now I'm like, ugh, I hate it when people say like, we're just terrible creatures and our hearts are full of evil and sin. I'm like, mine isn't. What's wrong with yours? Go to the hospital, get it checked out. I don't know what's wrong with you. But like, my heart isn't gross. My heart isn't just toiling with sin and whatever. It's overflowing with love. It's overflowing with joy. It's overflowing with the breath of the universe. That's my piece of heaven. And I think this idea of having good luck or bad luck has even so much more to do with a mindset piece of, are you living in your piece of heaven? Are you living in this core of, I am beautiful and worthy and divine? Or are you living in a state of, I have to work to get better and I'm this terrible person? And I think all of these things, this negative mindset of terrible things keep happening to me, has almost more to do with how you view yourself than how you view your circumstances. Mom, I'm having so much fun doing this podcast with you. Thank you so much for being open to the idea of a podcast. Just a project that is centered around vulnerable conversations and showing up for other people.
Yeah, it's a joy, and I'm so glad we live in a time where we can create content like this and hopefully bless someone who's looking to engage with other people on topics that really mean something to our human experience.
Absolutely. I know we invest a lot of time and money into creating the show, and we want our viewers to know that we are listener supported. So if this episode has been helpful or entertaining in some way, would you consider buying the show a coffee?
Yeah, it's a fun way to support the project and help us know that it blessed you. If buying a coffee, though, isn't something you can do right now, we'd love it if you would rate and share the show episodes on your own social media and help us reach more people.
Yes, we'd really appreciate all the prayers, good vibes, whether you buy us a coffee or share the content. We just want you to know we value you and your presence, and we can't wait to see where this project goes.
All right, check the show notes for links on how to buy us a coffee, but for now, let's get back to the conversation.
Why do you think it's like these bad things have to do with how worthy you are? Like, oh, I'm just terrible. These bad things keep coming to me and I'm just, woe is me, whatever. Not necessarily. Bad things will happen to everybody, no matter what mindset they have, but the mindset affects how you use them, because I think bad things can be tools. Like my cold is an example. This is maybe a really dumb example for some people. Like some people might think a cold is a dumb example. For me, my colds don't mess around. Like I get sick, I'm on the couch for days. This has been going on for over a week at this point, and I'm like just now recovering. And that's like every cold. So, you know, I get into the depths of despair and I'm like, oh, I'm really sick. But it can be this tool of great rest. Great meditation, great journaling, great time with my cat.
You get a day off work.
Oh my gosh, it's great.
My husband rubs my feet.
Yes. Like,
yeah.
being sick, while not all physically pleasant, wow, my heart, my mind refreshed. And that's just taking a different perspective on a bad thing. Like,
and but you have to choose that perspective.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not just like,
yeah, because I heard you say, you know, last week I was all depressed and, you know, like.
Yeah, it was sad.
Yeah, I mean, when bad things happen to us, we do have to choose how we're going to navigate it. And if we believe that it's a force outside ourselves that caused it or allowed it, we have to choose what that means for us. Like how, I don't want to repeat myself, but like we have to make peace with that at some point. And I like how you said earlier, like it's not necessarily a matter of your circumstances or believing that it's just your circumstances, but like it reflects how you believe, what you believe about yourself. And like, am I worthy of such a thing, or am I capable of good things? Like, we can take if we're someone who experiences negative things around us or happening to us all the time, like seems like back to back to back to back, it's just trouble upon trouble upon trouble upon trouble. And sometimes there's seasons of that for all of us, right? Where it's just like we can't see, you know, the tree through the forest. Like it's just a pile on us at all times. So we can go through that and we can have a season, but I know that there's a whole other class of people who are they just, I mean, they can't even look back and tell you a time of their life that was good, like really good, you know? And when I think about those people, I have some in my life. When I think about those people and I listen to what they say about themselves, they really do believe they are garbage.
Yeah.
And I think about, like, man, if I could just get through to them on a heart level of like, do you understand you are a walking miracle?
Yes.
Do you understand the miracle it took for you to wake up, put your 2 feet on the floor, and walk over to take a piss when you got out of bed this morning? Like, for real. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to reach into people's brains and like reprogram them, because it is programming. We do program ourselves, and the good news is we can reprogram ourselves.
Rewrite those neural pathways.
Yes. Neural pathways. Can we get on it? And like, and what does that say about luck even? Like, okay, so now we're back to the camp of like manifesting and from the inside out. Like, neuroscience tells us that we can create new pathways in our brain, and that depression largely stems from the same pathway being worn over and over and over and over. So the things that you say to yourself, oftentimes having roots in your childhood of something that someone else said to you or said about you, or that you interpreted to be a thing. Like, you interpreted something to mean I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
When that's never what the person intended it to mean. But for some reason in our lived experience, that's what we brought it into our brain as. That's what we brought it into our existence as. And then because the brain is always looking for evidence of what you're telling it, the moment you tell it, I'm not good enough, it's now looking for evidence in that statement everywhere.
And negative things are honestly easier to find than
Easy
positive.
to find. And it's easy to tell ourselves. And it's easy to take 10 different circumstances and create one simple message of I'm not good enough. So we can walk through this life and experience all these different things. But if from our childhood something happened where we formed a pathway that said I'm not good enough, and that experience and that message gets worn over and over and over and over, that pathway is so strong. It's like grass, that doesn't grow in a field anymore when the truck has taken that same route through the grass, right? Grass just does not even grow there. Even no more trucks are going that way. You don't even have to be having experiences anymore that carry that message. But because you've had so many trucks going that way for so long, grass does not grow there. You have to dig up the dirt. You have to put new grass seed in for there to be grass growing in that pathway that the trucks used to take. So that is the process of reprogramming our brain. We have to recognize that there's a well-worn path in my brain for some reason. I don't have to identify exactly where it started, exactly where it came from. I just have to understand, okay, that's there. That's in my lived experience. Bet. Let's figure out how to change that. So let me get in there, get my hands dirty, dig up some dirt. Let me just disrupt things. So what does that mean? It means I spend time every day disrupting my thought pattern. So as I go through my day and I experience something that I start to notice that I have a tendency toward I'm not good enough. Once I notice that that's my pattern, then I can go throughout my day, and as I experience something, I can start to listen for or begin to feel where that shows up in my body. Maybe it's in my guts, or maybe it's in my throat, or maybe it's, in my heart space or whatever. Like, we feel things in different ways. It's a matter of spending time with yourself, getting to know these things, getting some therapy probably.
Yeah.
And then learning to identify how that shows up for me, or whatever your message is. Maybe it's some other message, but we're just using this one as an example, right? So unpacking, I'm not good enough. When I go through my day and I live out my experiences here and there, and that moment comes up, I dig up the dirt by interrupting that pattern, interrupting that thought, because that's just a neural pathway. It's just a truck traveling down that empty road in your brain. So like, put the brakes, stop the truck, back up the truck, right? Back up the truck, dig up the dirt, put a new thought in. I am worthy. I am good enough. I am whatever. Like, feed yourself new grass seed. Put new seed in there. Stop the truck. Dig up the dirt. Like, you don't have to. Like, I feel like some people get so stuck because they can't go back. They can't figure out why this all started. When did this all happen? They may spend years in therapy trying to find the source. Sweetheart, that source might not even be with you.
Yeah. It might be like 5 generations back.
Okay. Like, let's just acknowledge that could be, like epigenetics tells us that is a thing. Okay. So let's just put that to rest. Let's just say, okay, I understand. This is my experience. This is what's happened. And maybe there is some like massively traumatic event, and you have to kind of, work through, reconciling that event in your brain. And I would say EMDR is a great therapy to try to reconcile your brain, because what happened in that moment, this is a side thought, but what happened in that moment of that intense capital T trauma was that your brain stopped because you entered fight or flight or freeze or whatever, fawn or whatever it was. Like, you entered a moment of, I have to survive this. And your brain stopped the process, the integrating process. Because what happens in a normal healthy brain is that you experience something, and the experience bounces from each side of the brain to the other to like timestamp it and integrate it and accept it. And then you move on, you feel the emotion, you kind of, okay, you understand it, you go through it and whatever. Processed, done. Trauma stops that process, interrupts that process of integration, and time like blocks the time. Like, it can't move through time with you anymore. Wow. It's like you continue moving through time, but that trauma is stuck at that time. And so that's why it's a really interesting thought for me when I read Eastern stuff about every past version of you is still with you, because it's like, there are things that happen to us at every stage of life, and, we carry that with us. And especially if we've had major traumas, we can get stuck. There are parts of us that can get stuck in those experiences, in those times. We haven't been able to integrate them fully and provide leadership to them and healing and all those things. So that's what's so encouraging about reprogramming. And whether you believe it's luck or bad luck, good luck, manifesting, God, Jesus, impersonal force, whatever you want to call it, there's something to be said about the ability for us to work from the inside out, reprogram difficult messages that have just stuck with us, because there's a lot of research that suggests we only operate out of like 5% of our brain, and 95% of our patterns of behavior actually come from the subconscious brain. And so it's all of these subconscious things that have happened to us over our lifetime and generations past that we carry with us, that's actually the cause of our current behaviors. And so if we can't get into and still our conscious mind and be able to tap into the subconscious mind and do some reprogramming, do some rehealing, do some healing and, digging up of these old things, then we're just doomed to repeat the same stuff that, the bad luck, the things that we would call bad luck. All these bad things just keep coming to me. These bad things keep happening to me. Okay, let's take a look at your subconscious. Let's take a look at things you subconsciously believe about yourself. And this is where I think when you said earlier, people will say, why is all this bad stuff? I'm doing the good things. I'm doing the things I'm supposed to. I'm thinking about and manifesting, meditating, whatever, and all these bad things are still happening. I think that has root in this idea of the 95% of our life is actually what's going on in the subconscious. And so we have to, Dr. Joe Dispenza does amazing work bridging science and these tools we now have to bring to light, bring to our vision what's going on in the subconscious. It's fascinating stuff. So I'd suggest to anyone to go check him out if you want to kind of learn more about that. But also I'm getting ready to lead a discussion and reading of a book called Quantum Life by Steve McVey. It's going to get into the whole quantum field and how, what effect we have on our lived experience. And, some people want to ascribe those experiences to luck or I think at the end of the day, people are probably just saying luck is either something I create, like there's that camp, or the other camp is luck is something that happens to me.
Oh, yeah.
Either way, you can choose your perspective about it. And it's your perspective and your response, I think, that has the most impact of what you continue to see down the line.
It shapes your mindset unimaginably.
If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share the love and buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/The Becoming Home Podcast. And hey, if you want to connect with us, you can find Joe on Instagram at committing_2_change, or find the link in the description or the show notes.
Absolutely. And if you want to connect with my mom, Charlene, you can find her at fullyabundantlife.com, which will also be in the description and show notes. The Becoming Home podcast is a passion project to bring multi-generational perspectives to the hard topics that we face, becoming home for one another through vulnerability and respect. And we hope it has blessed you today.